I noticed the missing money before I even saw their message. The joint account I kept for family emergencies had always been more for them than for me, but I still maintained it out of habit. I logged in that morning expecting to see the usual balance, the result of months of disciplined saving and quiet sacrifices. Instead, the number was wiped clean. 0. My stomach tightened, not out of confusion, but recognition. This wasn't new. It was familiar in the worst way. If you're still here, you already know this story is only getting deeper. And the next twist will hit hard. Please subscribe our channel, please. A moment later, their text appeared. Ha. Nothing else. No explanation, no reason, not even the courtesy of pretending it wasn't intentional. They treated it like a harmless joke, like emptying the account I worked for was the same as hiding the remote or switching the lights off while someone showered. That small message told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was entitlement disguised as playfulness. My parents had done things like this before, dipping into the account whenever my brother spiraled again. His gambling, his impulses, his constant mistakes were always framed as accidents, while I was expected to stay responsible, steady, and ready to clean up. They always believed I would forgive it because I always had. I was the reliable one, the one who didn't complain, the one who stayed quiet even when it hurt. But staring at that empty balance, the feeling was different. It wasn't sadness, and it wasn't anger. It was clarity. This was the moment all the past excuses collapsed. Every time they said it's just temporary. Every time they promised they'd pay me back. Every time they compared my stability to my brother's recklessness while still rewarding him for it. All of it suddenly lined up, forming a picture that was impossible to ignore. They took advantage of my silence. They mistook my patience for weakness. And they assumed I would absorb the consequences, like always. So I didn't answer their message. I didn't call or ask why. Instead, I began sorting through documents, account histories, old statements, everything I had quietly organized over the years. They thought I was predictable. They thought I would react the same way I always did. But this time, they had taken more than money. They had taken the last bit of trust one had been holding on to, and they had no idea what that would cost. The more I dug through the account records, the more obvious the pattern became. Small withdrawals at first, then larger ones, each time suspiciously close to one of my brother's gambling relapses. Every time he stumbled into another disaster, the money didn't appear out of thin air. It came from me, from the extra shifts I took when I was exhausted, from the weekends I skipped outings to save, from the opportunities one delayed because I believed my family needed stability more than I needed comfort. I had never confronted them because confrontation in our house always turned into guilt. They were experts at it. They could twist any situation into a story where they were victims of my coldness or distance. Over the years, they trained me to swallow frustration before it even formed. But this time, their carelessness exposed everything. That one laughing text showed they felt no shame. They thought they had a permanent right to my effort. Instead of reacting emotionally, I focused on what I could actually control. The first step was closing the joint account, not quietly, but formally with documentation that ensured it couldn't be reopened without my signature. I separated every automatic transfer, rerouted my savings, and changed the passwords they had casually guessed in the past. I realized how freely I had given access to people who never earned the trust they assumed they owned. The next step was reviewing the legal trail I had unknowingly protected myself with. The account, while joint, had been funded entirely by me, salary transfers, digital deposits, work bonuses, and side earnings. Line after line proved the same thing. Their contribution was zero. They had been using my financial structure as a parachute without asking if I wanted them to land on it. As I processed everything, a strange calm settled over me. I didn't want revenge in the loud sense. I didn't want screaming or confrontations or drama that ends with slammed doors. What I wanted was distance. Real distance. The kind that doesn't rely on threats. The kind built by decisions that can't be undone. I scheduled a meeting with the bank to document the unauthorized withdrawals. The representative took one look at the records and immediately noted the inconsistencies. They told me that even with a joint account, repeated withdrawals by one party without the other's knowledge could qualify for an internal investigation. It wasn't about sending anyone to jail or making headlines. It was about setting a boundary that had never existed. While the bank processed their side, I began a quiet restructuring of my life. I updated my address on every account they still had old access to. I removed them as emergency contacts at work. I created new saving goals that had nothing to do with being someone else's safety net. For the first time in years, my energy was focused on myself without feeling selfish. Meanwhile, my phone lit up constantly. Missed calls, short messages, attempts to ask why I wasn't responding. They shifted from casual to annoyed, then to dramatic. But I didn't answer any of it. I didn't need to. Their panic wasn't my responsibility. They were finally experiencing what it felt like when I pulled myself out of the role they had cast me in. They had treated me like a backup plan my entire life. But as I watched the bank notify them of the freeze on investigations, I realized something. When people think you'll never walk away, they stop recognizing your value. And when you actually leave, the silence becomes louder than any argument you could have made. My decision wasn't fueled by spite. It was fueled by clarity. They wanted to treat my stability as a resource. I wanted my stability to be mine. And now, for the first time, I had created the separation necessary to guarantee it. They had emptied the account thinking it was a joke. They laughed because they believed nothing would change. But everything had already begun to change. And they didn't even see the shift happening. Once the investigation notice reached them, their tone shifted fast. The laughter stopped. The excuses started. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They were finally dealing with the consequences that had always bounced back onto me before. For years, they relied on my silence to continue taking from me. But silence works both ways. When I stopped reacting, their control disappeared. They showed up at my place uninvited, wanting to clear things up, but I didn't open the door. I didn't owe them a meeting, a conversation, or a performance to soothe their ego. I had protected them for too long, protected their image, their comfort, their denial. That protection was gone now. What surprised me most wasn't their guilt or fear. It was how light I felt. I could finally breathe without calculating how my choices might bail someone else out. I no longer had to carry the weight of problems I didn't create. A week later, the bank finalized the freeze. They couldn't touch a single rupee linked to my earnings. Their messages changed again, from apologizing to demanding to begging. But I stayed focused. Distance wasn't punishment. It was healing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the fallback option. I wasn't the financial crutch. I wasn't the one expected to sacrifice everything to keep the family comfortable. I was just myself, finally free from the people who thought they could laugh while draining the life I worked so hard to build. And I didn't look back.